There's an article over on Mother Jones called How Income Inequality is Messing with Kids' Brains. The article is about a series of studies currently ongoing measuring the difference between the brains of like low-income kids in poverty versus more middle-class kids. It's measuring certain parts of the brain like executive functioning, seeing how that ramps up with poverty. And I'm not going to nitpick the whole article. I don't have a problem with the studies themselves, but what I do have a major problem with are a few key parts of this article, specifically the title. We'll start with that. The title is How Income Inequality is Messing with Kids' Brains. Now, I read through the article and I didn't see any mention of income inequality, so I searched the page and turns out actually there's only one mention of any income inequality in this article, and that's in the title. Otherwise, the article itself, besides the title, makes no mention of income inequality, so there's a misnomer if I've ever seen it. Oh, and just so you're aware, in the description there is a link to this article if you want to follow along. I'm just going to be taking a few specific pieces out of it rather than going through the whole thing in a more in-depth manner. First, I want to state that poverty is not an actual thing. Just something to keep in mind. Poverty is not a real thing. It's a lot like darkness. Darkness is not a thing. It's more of the absence of light, as poverty is the absence of prosperity. Poverty is really the starting position, whereas prosperity is an actual thing. I mean, even then, I guess technically prosperity is not a literal thing. But when you say poverty does something, poverty caused something, well, and that's not exactly true. I get that. I get that this might be nitpicking. But when you want to prove that one thing is correlated to the other, to say poverty is correlated to low intelligence or something like that, of course there's a much deeper meaning to that. It's not the poverty itself, it's something that is experienced, some part of the life of children and people in poverty. So I just wanted to mention that quick. Next, they do talk a lot about the correlation between poverty and low IQ, low executive functioning in the brain, lower graduation rates, lower just overall success, those kind of things. And they always jump right to poverty is causing this rather than the other way around. I mean, it could be, I'm not saying it is the other way around, but they always jump right to this conclusion without establishing why this is the case. For example, low IQ. I think we can safely say that if someone has a low IQ, say I have an IQ of 100, someone else has an IQ of 130, that person is more like, if we are at the exact same scenario starting out, say we were raised the exact same way, went to the same school and everything, we both got nutrition, that guy with the IQ of 130 is more likely going to be more successful than me. Doesn't always happen, doesn't have to be the case. But generally, just in terms of pure gambling odds, that person is likely to be more successful than me, just because his IQ is higher. He can think better, he can plan better, he can delay gratification better. That's how that generally works. So when referring to certain correlations, saying, poor kids are less likely to succeed, they're slower, they have lower intelligence, kind of thing. That may not necessarily be because of poverty. It may actually be the other way around. That's the reason they're in poverty. And of course, there can always be a cross correlation. I forget exactly what that's called. Poverty can be influencing lower intelligence. Lower intelligence can be influencing poverty. Obviously, if you're of lower intelligence, you're less likely to be successful. And if you're poor to the point where you're just barely scraping by, you may not be able to afford like the certain nutritional foods they always talk about. And of course, that can have an effect on IQ. Next up, the article talks about how this study could prove that moving children out of poverty may fix these problems. I would say no. Because again, if you're moving children out of poverty, again, how is that money being spent? What exactly is causing the difference in brain chemistry of these children? Again, if you just give children money, or if you give the family money and they just stuff it in a bank and never use it, obviously that's not going to change anything. So we have to keep in mind that the solution isn't just to hand them money. The solution is to figure out what part of poverty, what experience in this child's life, what factor is causing these differences in brain chemistry, if any. Because the goal is not to just move them out of poverty, it's to figure out exactly what is causing this difference and then how to rectify it in the most efficient solution. So that brings me to, how are we moving them out of poverty? All right, are we just giving them handouts? Are we giving them a certain type of education? Are we doing it voluntarily, or is the government stepping in and using tax dollars that we don't have? What exactly is the solution? And I think the article leaves it far too open-ended. Actually, not even that. They immediately They immediately jump into politics about how, oh, if Hillary Clinton was president, things would be so much better now. We'd have a lot more funding. Trump is president and he wants to cut Medicaid. And keep in mind, when they say cut Medicaid, they're saying cut Medicaid, but the actual truth is it will increase by a lesser amount than was originally planned. So it is still, these cuts aren't actual cuts. They are just decreases of automatic increases in spending. But of course they go into politics and immediately it's all, the government should fix this, the government needs to step in, the government needs to do this. And I would say that's not the solution at all. It's neither the moral nor the practical solution. And of course, if we're talking about politics, then we get into the issue of, we're $20 trillion in debt. We don't exactly have the money for this. Though I do think it's interesting to mention that the study is going on without much in the way of focused federal funding. So the studies are still going on without government funding. I know people complain a lot about, government needs to fund the arts, it needs to fund research and development, it needs to fund all of these things, or else society is just going to collapse and we're not going to advance at all, and just the arts will suddenly disappear overnight. And of course, no, that's not the case at all. This is just more of a side point that, hey, it turns out that the private industry can fund things, that charity can fund things, that we can get things done without government overreach. But honestly, that was just about it. It was just those particular problems, especially the title. Once I saw that the title talked about income inequality, but the article makes no mention of it all, I just had to respond to it. So we'll wrap up there. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like. Follow me on social media listed right here. Subscribe to my channel for more. Obviously, feedback in an audience, it motivates me to do more of these. The more people that see it, it's like, hey, I should make more of these at a much faster rate. If there was something I could have added, let me know. Tell me. What do I need to add? What do I need to change? What can I do better? So thank you very much for watching.